biggest narrative takeaway for a quarterback if they lose, and it would be Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
You pondered that, and I think you ended up agreeing
with
it.
I ended
right?
up agreeing with it, yeah.
And unfortunately for old Herbie, he threw more interceptions in this game than he had all year. He had 4 picks. He had 3 in the regular season.
Yeah.
It started off a bit of a doozy because the Chargers got out the gate. They couldn't score. They got a field goal. Then they get a turnover. They couldn't score on that. They got another field goal. So it's 6-0. And you're like, okay, here we go. C.J. Stroud didn't look good at all. And then the offense stopped. The Houston Texans defense stepped up. Herbert struggled. The offense struggled. Houston got it going on 3rd and 16 play.
From their own, 7-yard line or whatever it was?
From their own 7-yard line. Here was this. I thought this was actually the incomplete turnaround point of the entire game was this.
Oh, the ball is free. Scooped up by Stroud. Circles. Throws. Complete. On a busted play. Hutchinson. Just like they drew it up.
Iron Eagle, CBS, 3rd and 16. Ball drops. Stroud just picks it up cleanly, rolls out, throws it 30 yards down the field. It was like their first big play of the entire game. And after that, he was lights out, they were lights out, and they blew out Justin Herbert and the Chargers by 20, leading many today.
What a bomb.
Justin Herbert, playoff loser.
Yeah, I agree with you completely that was the changing moment of that game. I mean, early on, and I texted this to you guys, and you loved the way the Chargers came out of the gate. You hated the fact that they dominated the first, whatever you want to say, 20 minutes of the game, whatever it might have been, and the score was 6-0. You can't do that in playoff football. Like, you have to leave no doubt. Opening drive of the game, they're moving it like a fart in the wind, breezing down the field, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You got a 3rd and 1. What's Harbaugh and Greg Roman going to do? Let's be physical, run the football, get that first down. Stuffed in the backfield for a loss of 2. All right, settle for a field goal. I would have gone for it there to our previous conversation about going for it. Whatever, you take the points. Next drive, you get a fumble on Houston's opening play of the game. They fumble. You immediately get the ball back in your own territory. You pick up a first down. You're like, all right, here we go. Let's go make this thing 10-0 right out of the gate. Then Herbert takes a sack on first down in which he's just overwhelmed in the pocket. Second down, it was like 2nd and 18. He hits Will Dissly in the hands, who evidently had stone hands this weekend. Drops it, would have been a first down. All right, throw a screen on 3rd down. Now you got to settle for another field goal. If you can execute and finish those drives, that game is 14-0 in the first quarter.
Yep.
You're feeling great. Houston's demoralized. C.J. Stroud couldn't complete a pass, it felt like, for the first 3 drives until that play happened. And that one happened, and it felt like the dam broke loose. All of a sudden, the Texans got their momentum. They scored a touchdown. They got the ball back, took the lead at halftime, and then the interceptions piled up on Herbert in the second half. And you look up, and you're like, LA just dominated the first half of this game, and yet they're down
10-6.
20-6 at some point in the third quarter. It was one of those weird, fluky, back-and-forth games that could have gone easily differently, but when you get a quarterback turning the ball over, receivers not catching the ball, you can't run the ball, you can't block, this is what's going to happen in the playoffs.
I thought it was a tough weekend for Jordan Love and Justin Herbert.
Very tough weekend for both of them.
Now, you can say Love had nobody, everybody was hurt, no doubt about it. We all watched that game. I didn't actually think he was particularly good. And Justin, I mean, his interceptions, the fourth one is a chuck up, game's kind of over, whatever.
Yeah. That one, and then the third one.
The third one's off Dissly. That's
Dissly.
all
literally
Dissly.
Deflected off.
2 of the 4
are on him.
I would say absolutely him. A jump ball, I read this on the Charger beat writer wrote this. The jump ball to Quentin Johnston.
1st and 10 after a C.J. Stroud interception. They tried to take a shot.
The one where he threw it all the way across the field.
The one that was basically
that was the
a jump
first
ball.
one.
That first one, that had a 32% success rate chance.
I don't know why he threw that.
Quentin Johnston's not a receiver I'm picking to want to throw over the middle, deep, whatever. He was awful yesterday.
0 catches.
0 catches, like 7 targets. And McConkey just unfortunately a little too short. That he airmailed that ball.
Yeah,
for a
that
pick
one
6.
was the timing was off because when Herbert was ready to throw it the first time, like Ladd hadn't turned.
He had to readjust his body, so his
threw
base
a
wasn't
hitch,
set.
and then he sailed it.
It was kind of I thought a collective symbolism, right? Where their roster this year was not looked at very favorably by most pundits. They were not picked by everybody to make the playoffs.
No.
I only picked them to make postseason because of Harbaugh. I didn't love the roster. And then McConkey was really good. He was their go-to guy in this game and mainly most of the year. The run game obviously improved, and we thought it would because of Harbaugh, Roman, and their history. But it kind of was a summation of Herbert's still learning how to do this at an elite level, not playing well. They don't have weapons. It's just a fact. There's no argument there. They do not have a weapon. They need to go get a premier receiver. McConkey's good. McConkey's not a 1.
Yep.
Okay, so they need to improve the roster. And then also just an avalanche of unfortunate events. I didn't know before that 3rd and 16, I didn't understand how that wasn't a safety.
It could have been intentional grounding the play before that in the end zone.
Well, but can you tell me how it's not intentional grounding?
I think their labeling was he was out of the pocket.
They said
is what
he
they
got
said.
out of the tackle
There's no
box.
world that exists where that's out of the pocket.
Yeah, I agree
he
with
took
you.
2 steps.
Yeah, and just chucked it out of bounds.
And then chucked it, and they were
And there
like,
was
he got to the
nobody
line of
within 20
scrimmage.
yards.
He's out of the pocket. He's like, no, he's not at all.
Yeah.
So, like, if that's a safety, it's just a whole butterfly effect. And then they just didn't play well. Their defense was not very good. They did not get stops. Nico Collins had himself a big game. And so, like, their kind of dream magical season of surprising people and then going on the road as a favorite, it just comes to a screeching halt, and Herbert doesn't play a good football game.
I mean, he threw more picks in the playoff game than he did in the entire regular season. One of the funniest tweets of the weekend was a gambling guy had his favorite prop bet of the weekend was the under half of interception, 1/2 interception for Justin Herbert because he only threw 3 in the regular season, and that was his favorite bet. It's like the theory going in, I totally get it. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. He hadn't thrown a road interception since the second game of the season on the road at Carolina. The most egregious one of all of them for me was the first one because of everything that you guys were talking about. Like the one that went through McConkey's hands, that was a weird, clunky play. And, of course, as it goes through his hands, one, it doesn't get deflected down at all. It clearly goes through his hands, and there happens to be a DB just standing there, and it hits him in the chest. The one off of Disley, like, that's not Herbert's fault in any way, shape, or form. And the one at the end of the game, you're trying to make something happen because you're down by multiple scores. The one that I hated the most was throwing a jump ball into double coverage on 1st and 10 when you had all the momentum. And C.J. Stroud, the play before, had thrown an interception where we were all saying, what is he? What do you do? What?
They had back-to-back. What are you doing?
What do you just threw? There was nobody even there. Like what? Like that was C.J. Stroud. The way we're talking about Herbert this week, and he will be talked about. That was C.J. Stroud in the first half of that game.
Yeah.
And I would have defended him because they have no wide receivers. Their offensive line has been bad. They weren't running the football early in the game. Like he was kind of out there by himself trying to make chicken soup out of chicken S, right? It's not an easy thing to do. He threw that pick. You had all the momentum at 6-0, and it felt like that was your chance to let's go seize this game. Let's go put a stranglehold on this thing by scoring a touchdown. And I get the idea of wanting to be aggressive. You always want to take shots right after a turnover. Defense had to run onto the field.
It wasn't there.
But it wasn't there. It was double covered, and just eat it, throw it away, do something. Understand that Quentin Johnston is not the kind of guy that's going to go make that play. He was horrible in this game, and it was almost a microcosm of there has to be a nuanced conversation about this. Herbert was bad. I was shocked at how poorly that he played, and that's going to linger for him for an entire offseason. He was 14 of 32. We can blame drops. There were a ton of them, but he was not good, and he needs to be good in order for them to win in the playoffs because of your original point about the roster. They're not there yet talent-wise, and so he has to lift everybody else up around him, and he clearly did not do that this weekend. But the one thing that we have harped on all year about this team that I didn't think was going to bite him this weekend because I didn't believe in the Houston Texans, but I knew it was going to bite him at some point in the playoffs, is that he just doesn't have a legitimate weapon on the outside. When you look at all the teams that are remaining in the playoffs, sans Houston, because all of their wide receivers seemingly are injured.
Houston, the one thing I would interrupt you with there, and I'll let you go, is Nico Collins reminded people that
he's still a stud.
He's in the conversation for wide receiver one
fair,
when he's
fair,
playing.
Very fair. So that shows you how much depth they have at wide receiver when they're healthy, and he had 7 catches for 122 yards. The fact that your first-round pick from a year ago, the guy that you were trying to turn into your number 1 wide receiver in his first playoff game, had 5 targets and 0 catches and multiple drops.
Yeah.
And led to an interception on a jump ball in which he wasn't even competitive to try and make a play to even knock it down. It highlights the largest issue that they have. And we can feel however we want to feel about Herbert. I understand the opinions are going to be very, very vocal this week.
A lot of anti-Herbert stuff.
A lot of anti-Herbert stuff. Until you give him that level of weaponry that is needed to win at the highest level, I'm just not going to quite go there. My opinion didn't change on him at all this weekend, despite how badly I thought that he played. And one of the biggest complaints that I would have from his performance, honestly, that C.J. Stroud definitely outplayed him in, was the use of his legs. I thought Herbert used his legs a lot more this year, and it was beneficial for them with big scrambles or design quarterback runs in 3rd and short situations. He had 0 carries for 0 yards. He was sacked, never really extended very many plays. C.J. Stroud, towards the end of that first half, had a couple of had that long 30-yard scramble.
No design runs for him.
No design runs, and no, I'm just going to tuck it and go make something happen because nobody's catching a football right now.
Yeah.
He's an elite athlete, and there's just a frustration for me. This goes all the way back to his time at Oregon of not wanting to utilize that skill set that he brings to the table. But it was an embarrassing loss and a terrible loss for Herbert and the Chargers.